Hi everyone. We are back with a few tips on how to build a breast milk freezer stash of 500 plus ounces. So I'm going to jump right into it. Number one, begin pumping early, but not too often. I know this can be contradictory, so let me explain a little bit. I started my freezer stash before my baby was 2 weeks old because I wanted to learn to pump and let daddy help with the fun as early as possible. So I started pumping ASAP. However, depending on your supply situation, you want to be careful with this. I'm guessing if you're worried about building supply, you aren't in an oversupply situation, but I'd be remiss if I didn't call out that pumping frequently before your supply regulates could result in overproduction and all the really fun challenges that come with that, like plug ducts and mastitis. So while you can begin pumping early, don't begin pumping too often unless you really need to boost your supply and you're sure that you need to boost. This is not because you aren't sure, you don't think your baby is eating enough, even if they're having wet and dirty diapers. If they are, you have enough supply. So just be careful with that one. Number two, pump once a day on maternity leave with no skipping. I started my freezer stash very early and I pumped every day while I was still at home with my little lady. I'd pump in the morning after her first morning nurse, and this allowed me to ensure I wasn't taking away anything she wanted to eat, but I was able to take advantage of those mornings when most moms have the most milk. And the other thing I did was to pump every time she had a bottle, every single time. So if you're going to let daddy take a night feeding, you can take some extra sleep, then you need to pump before bed. If you feed a bottle without pumping to replace that stash, you're just depleting your freezer stash and you're not building it. So you can certainly feed your baby a bottle every night, but that means you then need to pump twice a day in order to build that stash and build that extra session of pumping in to cover it. And that brings me to tip number 4, which is to nurse your baby every time you have a chance. So always choose nursing over a bottle. While you can, begin to use bottles, choosing nursing over the bottle always helps you build your supply and will help you build your freezer stash because you won't be depleting it. So the more often you nurse, the better your body gets at understanding your baby's needs. If you're really struggling and need to build this stash quickly, you can add in an evening or overnight pump. So I got the most milk in the morning, but adding in that extra pump is going to be something that helps you build your freezer stash even faster. So if you add an extra pump, make sure that it's after the baby goes to bed or after the dream feed so that you're not taking away milk that they want very shortly. So any extra ounces will help you build up this safety stash. So an extra pump whenever you can fit it in is something that will help get you there faster. Watch videos or look at pictures of your baby while pumping, and this should stimulate letdown and help you get more out of each pump session. It essentially just makes the sessions you have even more effective. Pump through 2 letdowns. This is something that might not be as comfortable at first, but it's a definite way to get a little more milk each and every time you pump. So get through a pumping session and then either take a short break or just continue pumping once no milk is coming out to see if you can get another letdown. And often you'll be able to get out a couple of extra ounces to help you get to that 500 ounces even faster. Tip number 8 is to drink tons of water. Now, tons is, not a very specific metric, but literally keep a water bottle in your hand at all times. Constantly drink water. One of the fastest ways to boost supply and then get more for your stash is to ensure you're drinking enough water, more than 80 ounces per day. Breast milk is mainly water, so it makes sense that this is really just going to help your supply. Eat lactation cookies. So for me, this could actually be placebo, but it's something that I found to work, so I thought I'd recommend it. I might have just really needed the calories, but eating oatmeal chocolate chip cookies really made me feel like I was increasing production. I didn't even add the brewer's yeast, but I would suggest you add that because that's a key lactation producing ingredient if you want the full benefits. And you can check out the recipe at the hyperlink below. And finally, go on a breastfeeding vacation or power pump weekend. And this is probably the hardest option, and I'd only do it if you really need to boost your stash or your supply. If you have a healthy stash going and are building up, I'd leave this for a time when really need it or your supply tanks. But basically, a breastfeeding vacation is when you take your baby to bed for the weekend and nurse every hour. This doesn't mean the baby sleeps in the bed for you. Please keep them in a separate, safe sleep space. But this is an in-bed vacation because your focus is on nursing and not skipping sessions. So literally, you do nothing for an entire weekend but nurse the baby. Even if baby isn't hungry, do skin to skin to stimulate your lactation hormones. And alternatively, you can do a power pump weekend and get the same stimulation with a pump. This is, for me, I didn't love pumping, so it wasn't, the optimal option, but definitely helps build your stash and build up your supply. So especially if your baby just won't eat, it's a great way to get any extra ounces. But don't deplete all the milk in case your baby is hungry. So, you got to be a little bit careful with the power pumping. Those are definitely the last resorts, but a way to continue to build stash even more quickly. So 10 tips to build a freezer stash. You'll get to 500 ounces faster than you think if you are constantly nursing and pumping every time your baby has a bottle. So at first, while you're on maternity leave, only pump to build your freezer stash, then always pump to replace it. So these are the 10 tips I used. We had over 500 ounces for the entire first year, and our daughter had breast milk until 15 months. So it definitely worked for me. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out directly at carly@themamaslist.com.